Endeavor is a terrible father. Now, to the people who actually watched My Hero, you're probably saying to yourself, yeah, he was a terrible father. Whoa there, buddy. Hold your horses. Because the amount of videos and comments, mainly on Twitter, I've seen where people are not only defending Endeavor, but blaming Toya for what happened to him. Are you out of your mind? You're putting the blame on a... Hold up. 13-year-old, which I thought he was like 8. But still, my point still stands. Now, you guys are probably wondering, what could this man Endeavor possibly have done to make him such a bad father? Well... So Endeavor is portrayed as like the hot-headed pro hero who actually happens to be the number 2 hero for like a long time. So long, in fact, that he starts to believe that he'll never make it to the top spot. That top spot belonging to All Might, of course. So he gets to thinking, if I can't do it, I'll have a son who can! Now, before I go on, I feel like I gotta explain something real quick. Endeavor has a fire quirk. Fire makes things hot, right? So what's the main problem with having a fire quirk? Overheating. So Endeavor gets this bright idea to marry someone with an ice quirk. So that way he could have a child that has the fire quirk without its limitations, because he could just cool himself off with the ice quirk. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, Endeavor's a pretty good looking guy. So finding someone with an ice quirk to bear children shouldn't be that hard, right?
I know Grandma and Grandpa were poor, that's why they sold you, right? You had no choice in what your life would be like.
Well, it might have been a little harder than I thought. So this is Rei. I'm sure you can tell by her appearance, she has an ice quirk. And we never really get to see much about Rei's past, but we see enough to understand what's going on. Like, pro hero goes to poor family to buy wife, to make that wife have children until one of them has a fire and ice quirk. So Endeavor, on a new journey for greatness, has his first child, Toya. Now, Toya, from a very young age, also wanted to surpass All Might because Endeavor pretty much brainwashed him into thinking that that's his calling. He has to be the number 1 hero. But this was pretty much drilled into Toya's head until they learned that Toya doesn't have an ice quirk. As a matter of fact, he has worse. He has a better version of Endeavor's fire with a body that's better suited for an ice quirk. That's tragic! But to Endeavor, as soon as he found out that he doesn't have Rei's quirk, this man became useless. To Endeavor, at least. But in the very beginning, things didn't really seem all that bad. Toya would really just spend time playing with his siblings, hanging out with his mom, even hanging out with Endeavor sometimes. Not too often, but he did. But then, the worst possible thing finally happened. Shoto is born! Now you might be wondering, what's the big deal with Shoto being born? He was the bearer of the fire and ice quirk combination. So once Endeavor realized that Shoto not only had his quirk, but Rei's quirk, it was raps! He wouldn't even bat an eye towards his other kids. Those other kids being Natsu and Now, over time, the amount of neglect became so unbearable. Toya was ready to do something crazy. Now, before I tell you what that is, I just want to say I'm not defending Toya's actions at all. Because what he's about to do, or try to do, is like actually insane. Okay, you ready? He tried to kill Shoto! Baby Shoto. Like, it's not his fault your dad's a piece of shit. What'd the baby do? Look at him! Now fast forward a few years and we see Endeavor training with Shoto. It's around this time period we learn Shoto doesn't really like training all that much and would much rather spend time with his siblings, while Toya, on the other hand, doesn't really like to play with his siblings and would much rather train to become a stronger hero. If only, right? Then on one magical day, Toya's fire turned blue. Now, I don't know if something like this has ever happened before in the My Hero verse, but it's the first time we saw it, and they portrayed it as a pretty big deal, so I'm gonna assume that this is the first time. This is probably a good time to mention that Toya isn't exactly allowed to train because he has a fire quirk with a body that's better suited for an ice quirk. So he just keeps burning the shit out of himself over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. And Endeavor's not having it. Now, it's at this point where things take a turn for the absolute worst.
I asked you to do one thing! Just stop him from training!
I won't let you feed me to Mommy! Stop it! You're being a bully!
Get out of here, Shoto! This has nothing to do with you!
Oh my goodness! This man's a wife beater! So not only does he emotionally destroy his kids, brainwash his kids, buy his wife for them to hopefully one day have a fire and ice power, all to surpass another dude! But he's beating his wife too. You can't make this shit up. I do not understand how people will genuinely defend this man. There's no defending this! So yeah, Toya tells his dad to come to Sokoto Peak, and Endeavor never shows up. This was so devastating for my man that he starts crying. Now, you might be thinking, alright, I mean, he's a kid. We saw him crying before. Well, this time's different because he completely loses control. Fire starts shooting everywhere. He's burning the trees. He's burning the mountain. He's even burning himself. Remember when I told you he has a fire quirk, but a body that's more suited for an ice quirk? Well, he burns to death. All this boy wanted was for his father to love him, and now he's dead. Well, actually, he's not, because All For One saved him. But we don't find that out until, like, season 6 or 5 or something, so that doesn't really matter right now. Fast forward a few years, and Shoto's ready to start high school. It's at this point we learn that Shoto absolutely hates his father. So much, in fact, that he refuses to use his fire quirk. Now, I completely understand why he hates his father. But to not use your quirk because he also has a fire quirk? Honestly understandable. But not using his firepower is severely limiting him as a hero. I mean, not that it really matters because his ice is fucking ridiculous. This is him in season 1. How do you compete with this? But Endeavor desperately wants him to use his fire because he literally had 3 other kids that he doesn't even want just for Rei to finally give birth to Shoto. But Shoto actually does end up using his fire thanks to Midoriya later on.
It's yours! Your quirk, not his!
It doesn't change the fact that his kids now have such a deep hatred for him that an external source, Midoriya, had to convince Shoto to use his quirk. That's crazy. Now, before I end this episode off, I just want to show you guys, because there's definitely going to be some My Hero watchers that are like, but Endeavor's trying to atone. He doesn't even want to just be forgiven. He's trying to make things right. Let's just hear what his kids have to say about that.
You never meant to neglect us? Well, it doesn't matter, because all I remember is feeling abandoned, like Toya said. It'll be a cold day in hell before I ever forgive you. When I see your face, all those memories rush back. Why should I have to get over my feelings when everything's your fault? So you want to atone? What the hell is there you can even do for us?
Yeah, but with all that being said, stay faithful, stay truthful, stay loyal, and have a blessed day.
What did you say about basketball?